So tell me about your thesis.
Uh, so, my thesis is about how to connect technique and storytelling in a film, and how to make it so that they contribute to each other, they improve each other. And of course, there are various ways you can do it, that it's not just one way that is the correct way, which is why I'm trying to kind of categorize the different uses and find examples, such as your film, just to show in my thesis, like, what can you do, what can you combine together,
Yeah.
and do you always have to do that? Because it's not necessary, you can also just make a film, right? And not care about having some trick or some technical detail that is totally revolutionary. But yeah, when does it make for a better film, actually? So that are my questions that I kind of want to answer in my thesis, or maybe just give ideas for thought for future films,
Yes.
filmmakers. Yeah. So yeah, and what struck me about the film that you made together with Marta Gennari is this use of the panels and the screen space, which is
Yes.
very nice, but also very natural in a way. It's still very much a story and not just an experimental film. And that's I wanted, just for you in general, wanted to ask you, where does making a film start for you? Is there some story you have, and then you try to find a way to present it in an interesting way by figuring out the technical details? Or is it more that you have this idea of some kind of trick or a certain look that you want to achieve, and then you think, what kind of story could I tell?
Yes. So, well, it's a very good question, and I also think it depends a lot. It's not like always the same. It's not a fixed rule that every film starts in the same way. For example, I have Merlot that I made with Marta, and now this other film that I just finished, which is called Marea. Merlot, for example, was really a collaborative project, first of all, and it really came from a word play. Like, we were really brainstorming together, me and Marta, and we were thinking about creating some loops. The first thing that came was the idea of the structure, let's say. So we wanted this story to be a loop, or to be a surprise, so that the end could be also a beginning. In fact, the end is like finally you understand which story is it about. The process was very, I want to say, like, spontaneous. It was integrated with this brainstorming session. We had first some separated sessions, then we were coming together, then again separated. But that time, by the way, we were also flatmates, so we were really working full time on this project and trying to dedicate lots of time, a little bit on our own, but a little bit also together. And the goal was also to combine our two worlds, so also in the style or in the vision. For that particular story, the approach was very much focused on the structure. And we like this idea of a sort of domino effects, and all the elements are connected. And for this reason, because all the elements are connected, it was very important to show multiple situations at the same time.
So it was sort of a narrative structure that you had in mind.
Yes.
Not like a theme or anything, but this kind of chain of events.
Yes, we like the idea that all the events were connected and all the characters were connected, which is also very funny now that I say it out loud, because also the latest film I made, it's also based on the fact that we're all connected. So there is this like butterfly effect, if you do a small action, it would have like reactions on every level. So we started like that, and also we were very much in this fairy tale mood. And as I said before, it was a word game, because in Italian, the word wolf is like loop. It's the same sound of loop. And so we were thinking about creating this loop of the loop, kind of.
I see.
So yeah, we were playing around with fairy tale characters. At the beginning, it was not necessarily Red Riding Hood, but yeah, it ended up while playing with the structure and showing what happens to all the characters in that particular moment. We started to fantasize about how, what about if we ask ourselves, for example, in Red Riding Hood, what happens in while the grandma is with the wolf? What is the, I don't know, the hunter doing? And so we started to play around with that, and we decided to, yeah, it developed in that sense.
It's true because Red Riding Hood is kind of a story like this, with these disjointed characters that meet in a certain place and miss each other and so on. So it's very interesting. And it reminds me very much of the kind of storytelling technique that our old teacher, Britt Perrin, was teaching. He was always
Yes.
having these diagrams of abstract characters that he just named A and B, and they would meet and separate and so on. So it reminds me very much of this, and it's very interesting that you found this visual representation of it with these squares or frames on the screen. And I read in an interview that you were inspired by Paul Dressen's The End of the World in 4 Seasons. And I also watched it, but I kind of found your film more pleasant to watch.
Yeah, well, I think Paul Dressen, he was from another generation, and he used it. I think it's very long, right? Now it's been a long time since and it's based on music, right?
It's relatively long.
Yeah, again, the use of boxes is like, in that sense, more in a graphical sense rather than maybe the storytelling. And actually, now that you mentioned him, we were very inspired, and we had the chance at one festival, I think in Lille, to meet him. And it was very, very nice to be able to talk to him, because of course we had kind of different approaches, but we cannot deny that there was a big influence from that. But also, while talking about different characters and how they are connected throughout the story, I clearly remember that we were inspired by Symphony Number 42 by Reka Buksi, because at that time we were in school. This film, it's very different. Like, there are no boxes or anything like that, but we really enjoy the fact that throughout the film there are completely different situations, and then at the end you kind of connect them. So, and I mean, in general, we had this idea of showing different situations, different characters, but all connected, and also how all the actions they do influence each other. And in our particular film, there is this bottle of wine, which is the element, the fil rouge, connecting all the characters, because somehow all of them, they got in contact with this object.
I like you're doing it a bit sneakily. You're not presenting it as this kind of central object. It just happens to be connecting it, but it's not something that I would have said in the end, like, of course, yes. It's.
But that's also the thing, I think,
I like
because
that.
we don't realize it, but we are all connected, and we are, whatever action you do, even if you don't know, even if you don't want, it's gonna be connected to other actions or other people, right?
So I think you took a more pragmatic approach with your film in comparison to Paul Dreesen, and maybe that comes from.
I don't know. I never had the chance to.
Different.
Yeah, I don't know. I
different
never had the chance to
inspirations
talk to
from
him
different
about
sides.
his reasons, or like the only time we met, it was very brief, and it was really like we were happy to meet him, but I never had the chance to ask him what was the the goal, or like the approach for his boxes.
Were there any ideas you had for the narrative that just didn't work with the boxes? Or,
yes, for sure. If you wait for a second, I go get I know where a sketchbook from that year.
Yeah, of course. Very
So
nice.
I can show you some. I mean, this is for sure not all the sketches I have, but it's from 2000. 15. And so here I remember that we were trying to brainstorm about it. In the beginning, we have completely different ideas. It was really a big process of like a puzzle, to be able to really fit those events together. And I mean, that's usually what happens with storyboard, but I think in this case even more, we had we really had like post-its, and we were moving them around in order for the narrative to work. Actually, I have here 3 post-its that we used, and it was for us a way to be sure that the audience could follow the storytelling, but also be updated at the same time about what was happening in the other scenes. So this was for sure a little challenging. But I remember at the beginning it was a little more confused. We had a lot of animals. We had all the animals of the forest, and then we decided to ditch them and make it more simple. Yeah, there were rabbits. Now I see. There were some rabbits. It was a little more crowded, I would say. But then, because we were just 2, and because we realized that we needed to make it simpler, we decided to cut. And again, even if we tried to make it simple, it was still not simple. Here I see at the beginning, I forgot about this. At the beginning, there is the wolf as a family, and they are sending him. They're sending him to get food because they're hungry. I don't know if you can see it here.
Yeah.
For sure, also this part was changed. Yes, then there is a rabbit. So yeah, this was already the same story. We were wanted to call it Red Wild Wine, and this was about this wolf very hungry and he cannot find food, and so what he finds is this wine. And then the rest was very similar. There was the grandma and all the birds and the hunter, but it was more complex. Yeah.
Was it more that Wolf was the main character?
Yeah, actually, also this is a thing. He was more important, but then with there was a deer as well. We developed it, and we thought it's better to focus on the 4 main characters. Then there are the birds extra, but but they're more on the same level also because there is not one point of view. You see the story from all the perspectives. Which I think also that's also very nice. But anyway, back then there was already this idea of the wine and
the spilled wine.
Yes, and also with the same idea was with the cloth. And as you can see, the design was still very early at that time. Yeah, so for sure it changes a lot. And I think one thing we learned during the school is that you cannot get too attached to the story or to the characters because they need to change, and there is a long process of adjusting while making the storyboard usually.
And also the other way around, did you have any ideas what you can do with the panels that just didn't fit with the story? I don't know, were there any ideas of like a character going from one panel to the other? Anything like that was just more on the technical side, but then you said, okay, that doesn't work with the story.
Yes, I think for sure. Now I don't remember a specific example, but I know for sure that you have to adjust from both sides, right? You have to adjust because
yeah.
Um,
Of course, it's not always so clearly delineated. So,
but I'm sure that this happens.
It's
like
hard
sometimes,
to answer.
Yes, you have to have you have to give priority to the story, but also you want to keep it aesthetically pleasant. So it's always balancing the two, I think.
So you already kind of mentioned this, but my question is like in your new films, are you planning to use these kind of panels, these tricks again, playing with screen space?
So my film that I just finished is called Marea, and I started to work on it thinking I'm gonna do exactly the same. So I really wanted to divide the panels and boxes, but in the end it developed to be different. So it's not exactly the same. There is the only thing that is a little similar and that I like is that I use this idea of boxes so that there is the whole concept is about the tide, so the sea level going up and down, and so I use these blocks of water going up and down, so they look like they're into a box. That's what I
They're
mean.
contained in the frame of the
Yes.
screen. Did you take any reference from graphic novels, comics, that sense? Because there is also very present that sometimes the panel can be the space where the characters are,
Yeah,
and
I
then
never
sometimes
thought
it's more
so,
open.
but yeah, I mean, it's clearly that I never really consciously thought, this is like inspired by a comic or a graphic novel. But for sure, yes, I really enjoy playing inside the frame and using the frame itself. I remember also during the animation school, I was really fascinated by all those short films that play with the actual box. Sometimes I go up behind, or I really think it's really fun to really go outside of the rule.
For like an individual filmmaker, let's say artistic shorts, do you think it's more important to have this kind of consistent style or to try something new with each film?
Mm, well, in general, I think the two things do not exclude each other. So I think it is important for every film to challenge yourself and try something new or test a technique or something like that. And the style can also stay the same or develop. Or in general, like not just for short films, I think sometimes we have this idea, this box that we have to find our own style, and once we find it, that's it. But I don't think that's the case. I think we all develop the style, and then the style keeps developing with us, right? and and then I think it's really nice that the short film scene or the festivals are so experimental and free. The fact that we don't have a client or a product to sell allows us to be very free. We're not trying to please any client, or so it's really the only opportunity we have to explore, kind of. When I balance client commission and short films, and with the clients it's much more, you do what they want and there are a lot of rules.
Yes.
So the short films are the only chance we have to be completely free with the content,
How
but
are
also
you
with the
funding
style.
your, or how have you been funding your film that you just finished?
Yeah, it was actually a long journey and not easy, and not an easy one. I
This
mean,
is not really for my thesis. It's just
sure, yeah,
I'm
it's
just
it's
curious.
important. Yeah, I think it's also very important to share those informations. I try to tell this story because I think it's important to know, because for me it was very hard to find out all the rules and how things work. So a little bit it's hard in general, but a little bit was also my fault because I moved so much. So after graduation, I was in Italy for a while, then I moved to Germany, and then after I ended up here in Switzerland. And so this meant that I had to change residency and tax declaration every 1 2 year. And this was not helpful for funds and for fundings, because I realized too late that very often you have to, actually always, you have to wait for at least 2 years of residency before being eligible for fundings in a country. So this is the first thing. And then in general, it's very complicated to fund a short film. First of all, because short films, they don't have a market. So very few producers, especially small producers, are interested in investing in that, because they're not going to earn money from a short film. And also, so what I did, because I was really committed to make more short films, was to think about all the possibilities I had. And I think I ended up with three ideas, and one was to use my free time, so invest my free time, combining some client work that would pay for my expenses and dedicating my free time for the short film. The second one is artistic residencies. I applied to one in Denmark, in Viborg, at the open workshop. I was there to develop this film. And in general, artistic residencies are good, I think, because first of all, they don't make you worry too much about your bills, because I had free accommodation and I didn't have to worry about that. And I was subletting my room in my vege. And then because you're there, so you're dedicated for that amount of time, and you have no excuses. You're in a new environment,
Right.
and you just do that. And in that particular case, it was also useful to have mentors and other directors and peers, so that everybody was working on a short film, and it was the right environment to do so. And well, the last one is to get funds. And to get funds is a little more complicated because you have to pitch your idea to producers. But another way that I thought was crowdfunding or Patreon. And that's what I tried also to launch. I launched it 1 year ago. And in general, I thought crowdfunding, launching a crowdfunding is a full new job. Because it was too much work. I really had to shoot a nice video and write the subtitles, and I don't know, it's really a big job for one person. And I was thinking, instead of doing a crowdfunding campaign, I can just start animating, honestly, because it would take so much time. And the Patreon, I'm really grateful that this happens and it's working, but it's mostly, I think, a motivational support rather than financial support. Which is great anyway, because I think for a personal project as a short film, you need some kind of social commitment and to keep the motivation high, because there is nobody checking on you, or
Right.
it's easy to lose motivation. So this is what happened, and after my 2 years of residency in Switzerland, I managed to find a producer. And I was actually not so keen in finding a producer anymore, because I started to write this film 4 years ago. And I know that with producing, it takes a long time, because first you apply to the producer, you pitch your idea, maybe the producer wants to do some edits, then you apply for all the funds. It can take 1 year or more. Then you collect the funds. So the moment you find a producer, it can take 2 more years before you can start animation. And so I was already too tired of this. And I told the producer, this is my film, is actually ready to animate. The pro-production is done, the characters are ready, the storyboard is ready. And so I told him, maybe we can start a new film together, but this one, I just want to do it now. But then the producer managed to find a small fund just for the production, which was great. I think it's not the usual way to make a film, because usually you go through pre-production together with the producer. But I was already ready to animate after so much time. And so I managed to animate it by myself. And the producer gave me 4 months to do it.
Do you have any team assistants?
Well,
or is it
the fund, we got fund from the national television, and the producer told me that would have been enough to pay me for 4 months plus 1 month, one animator, and the sound designer we also had. So I had to hire a Swiss animator, because that's also, with funds, they come with some restrictions, so you have to spend the money in the region. And so the producer hired one Swiss animator that she worked with me for 1 month. But first of all, I was scared not to finish. And second, I'm from Italy, so I have a lot of animators friends in Italy from the school in Italy. So I also hired myself with my resources a second animator from Italy, also for 1 month. So we were three animators for 1 month, and I did 4 more months on my own.
And that worked out with the timing.
Yeah,
Or was
actually,
it very tough
I
in
needed
the
one
end?
more month. I finished at the end of
Oh.
January instead of at the end of December. But yes, it worked. I mean, it had to work because it was already so long that I was working on it. I really wanted to finish, and I had the deadline of February is the application for Annecy Festival. So
I see.
I just
Okay.
pushed through, no Christmas holidays, and I did it.
Well, congratulations.
Yes.
Do you have any great examples of films that I should watch that kind of have this correspondence of technique and storytelling, where you think that they use it very well? A technical detail or some kind of innovation. I don't understand. I have a lot of examples in stop motion because just the materiality
Actually,
for stop motion can be so strong, but I do not want to restrict myself to stop motion because there are things you can do with 2D animation that are.
I'm thinking about
technical.
Spotlight Stories, I think they're called. They are on YouTube. There is a YouTube channel called like that, I believe, and it's this 360 degrees animations where the audience, like the person watching, the viewer, can decide where to watch. So you can go around and check.
Google Spotlight Story.
And I actually love it because it reminds me also of my Merlot approach, because you have to be sure that wherever the audience is watching, they can follow the story, and also there are some actions or sounds that capture the attention of the public so that they can follow. And this is also something we had to think of during the making of Merlot, because we have multiple boxes, but of course one was the most important, and the action was moving maybe from one to the other. So we were using actions or sound to guide the attention of the audience. And in Merlot, what we did was to use some loops so that maybe one character was stuck in his loop, and after a while it was not interesting anymore, but it was there. And so the audience could focus on the other box where something more interesting was happening.
Yeah, I like that it was kind of one action at a time, but then at the same time, multiple. Yeah, as you said, these loops, these background animations that are still not totally inactive. They have something.
That was also
it lets you focus on the story that there is mostly one panel where the main action is happening.
For us, this was also a trick to reuse and to optimize our energies, because we were just the two of us, and loops were great because we reused them a lot of times throughout the film. So if there is the hunter picking mushrooms, there are 3-4 scenes with this action, or it was very useful for us not to animate too much because it was already a long process. But anyway, I don't know if you found it, but yeah, it was Google Spotlight Stories.
Yeah, I found it.
Okay. Yeah, and for example, there is one with Christmas and Santa, and that's exactly what I mean. I think there the technique, which can be also this technical aspect of being a little interactive, is very much connected to the storytelling, because you have to be able to guide somehow the audience, even if they could watch everywhere.
So sometimes after festivals, I hear people saying, "Oh, this film, I didn't like it because they didn't use animation. They didn't use the possibilities of animation. They could have done this film just as a live action film. They could have introduced some kind of trick." Where do you stand on this issue? Do you think that's totally legitimate to just make animation as your medium, or?
I remember I thought it once for a long feature. The red turtles, Red Turtle, was a very nice long feature film. But I remember there was this discussion with my colleagues, like, why does it need to be animation? Because really could be a film, and it was a long feature, so with a huge production crew. So in general, I think this. I don't agree with the fact, oh, it could have been a live action or not. I think it's the director's choice. And also, I think, especially with short films, sometimes it's one person or two people behind the film, and animation is the easiest way to do it, even if it sounds weird, but it's not. Or maybe also depending of someone's background. If I don't know anything about how to use a camera, but I know how to draw the frame, so this is my tool, that's what I use. For bigger productions, for example, in this case, it's a long feature. I know there were so many people involved, and there are really, I would really want to know in that case, what was the main reason? I guess they have a reason. For example, there was also.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. The size of the production just.
Yeah.
Like the bigger the production is, the more possibilities you could have had to do it differently.
This
because
for sure,
you could
yes.
have involved other people who have a different focus.
Yeah, well, but also I think it's really in the end the director's choice, because I remember it's not live action animation, but it's stop motion or 2D discussion. I remember, I think it was with Paranorman. It's a maybe it's a stop motion
I think
feature.
I need to look it up, so I have the picture in my head. And then.
Yeah, it's stop motion, and it's made with these puppets. Very crazy good. The animation is crazy. They have so many different facial expression, and they changed the puppet mouth and face every frame. And I remember
it's a bit like 3D.
Yeah, exactly. The critique was, why didn't you do 3D, which was clearly more efficient and faster, etc. And I think I watched some documentaries about the behind the scenes, which is crazy. They did huge work, amazing backgrounds. And in the end, what they say is, yes, we know that 3D would have been better and faster, but it was really about the challenge of making the first long feature with this technique, etc. So in the end, it's not just about what's more efficient or what's cheaper, or so in that case, it's really the director choice to use a style, to challenge himself, to do the first big animation in this way. So.
And I think there's also this kind of factor, especially with stop motion, to intrigue your audience with like something very detailed, and people start asking, how was this done? How was this done? It's like a question that you always get if you have a stop motion film at festivals. They always ask, how big was the puppet?
Yeah, well, yes, it's a good question.
So I think it is kind of also keeping up the fascination of the audience for the technique.
Yeah, I never thought about it, but maybe it's true, because stop motion is so physical and real that it's more interesting somehow to find out about it, because nobody would ask a 3D rigger how the rig was, right?
Right.
But maybe because it's too abstract, because it's also very interesting.
Cannot imagine it, exactly.
And different and difficult. Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about your question, if I have some examples of film that can relate with your topic. And first of all, I'm going to go through my favorite that I saved on Vimeo, and I'm going to send you what I have. But right now, I remember right now when I was in Viborg in Denmark at the artistic residency, in my same room, there was a girl from the Netherlands working on our new short film. She uses a particular technique she already used in the previous film, and now she's doing this second one with the same technique. And what she does, it's like a sort of stop motion, but the characters are printed on a transparent foil, and they're cut out, so they are like two-dimensional characters but transparent.
Did she the Bluistrat?
Yes.
11. Oh yeah.
And now she's making right now. She's finishing the one that she was developing with me in the residency, so we really finished at the same time. And I think this is, for example, interesting because her technique for sure is part of the storytelling, and you can see through the characters, and she's playing with this.
I
And
also have this on my list. I have a short list of
perfect.
films.
Then if you talk to her, say hi to Nienke.
Okay. Okay, great. I'm at the end of the list of my questions. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Of
And I'm
course.
looking very much forward to your next film.
All right, then I'm going to send you the link.
Marlea. Now, what is the name?
Marea.
Marea.
Genau.
Yeah. Looking forward to seeing it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a nice weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye.